So the first question today is, why is it inappropriate to ask a doctor to write a note to a school about when a child is safe to return after being taken to an ER or doctor for a mental health crisis? I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me right away is just that it's really easy to jump to conclusions. Taking that example from the voice thread, the first one, the child was thrown out of class, labeled as a mental health crisis, without taking into account the whole situation. And it didn't really seem like his voice was heard very much. And that's another thing as far as inappropriateness in asking a doctor to do that. I think that you need to ask the student if they're ready to go back. And obviously, a medical professional can also weigh in on that decision, and probably should weigh in on that decision. But I think that the child's decision and their processing and their feelings are also really important in making that decision on whether or not they're ready to go back. So I think just taking into account their feelings and getting the whole picture, the whole perspective, asking multiple people who were involved in the situation, not just taking one person's word and running with it, but really getting all perspectives, all sides of it. Second question today is, how would you deal with Tommy as he comes back from class after hospitalization? I think I would start off with an honest conversation, sit down with him and just ask, what can I do for you? What can I do to help you? What can I do to make you feel more comfortable? Just overall to make the class feel safe and feel like a place that he wants to be and a place that he can learn and grow. Be a big part of it for me and for him. I think after sitting down and having that honest conversation, a big thing also would be to continue that. So it's not just a one-time conversation, but a continual conversation, keeping the door open so that he feels comfortable to come back and talk to me if something changes. And then also just, continual check-ins on my part, going to him and seeing, how are you doing today? The next day, how are you doing today? Because it does change on a daily basis, and being aware of that is really important. I think beyond that, depending on the situation, I might involve the parents as well. I know Tommy is a little bit younger, so definitely talk to those parents and just see, is there anything you're doing at home that I can continue and reinforce at school? Just to keep that continuity, and anything that's going to help him to grow and learn better, I want to help implement. I think also one thing that I would try to do, depending on the situation again, but and my class dynamics, but having a whole group discussion, not about Tommy specifically, but about respect, about how to treat our classmates, regardless of learning disabilities, regardless of any sort of anything, the importance of treating each other with respect. I think having that whole group discussion is really important, and making sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're a team and that we're all working together to be respectful. Third question is, which article did I read, and why did I choose that article? I read a proposal for increasing student safety through suicide prevention in schools. I picked this article because I just think suicide prevention is a huge thing. I think that preparing schools in all facets, from the cooks to the teachers to administration, I think preparing them, giving them training for how to handle suicidal kids, how to recognize them, and how to process forward is so important. I definitely have experience with suicidal feelings. Had that happen to me end of middle school, high school, just was not in a good situation with my home life and people that I was surrounding myself with. And so that's an area that really hits home to me. And I'm still here today because of people who took the time to recognize that I was struggling and to take me aside and to talk to me honestly and to keep living and to keep striving for success in all sorts of different areas. So I just think that this is such an important thing to be training our teachers and administration and school staff on how to do. As far as connections, I think for me, I grew up in a pretty wealthy school community, and I would have never been seen as someone who was considering those types of things. And I think the school that I'm at right now, that I'm student teaching at, Sioux Falls Christian, is pretty similar. A lot of the students are coming from homes where it would just be assumed that that wouldn't be something that we would have to deal with, and that most of the kids are all right. And I think that that's sometimes when it's scary, because it's not recognized, and it's kind of just an overthought, and people aren't recognizing those situations or those struggling students, and so then they get kind of just bypassed, and that's when you run into problems. So I think it's just so important, regardless of anything, all students need to be checked in on and seen if something is going wrong and why, and just be aware of the possibilities, and be aware that suicide is something that some kids are thinking about, which is so sad. But I think it's so important for us to have the skills to be able to handle those situations. The fourth question we have today is, what information from the mental health slides was pertinent or interesting to you as a teacher? I really resonated with the slides on depression and bipolar disorder. I've dealt with that a lot with my immediate family and also my extended family. Both of those things, bipolar and depression. And I think it's so important. I liked that the slides mentioned that depression doesn't look the same in every child. It's going to look different. And I think it's so important to be aware of that, because if you're only looking for somebody who has slumped over shoulders and never responds to questions, I think you're going to be missing a lot of kids who are struggling with those two things. And so I just liked that it brought out that point. It's really important. How does the information presented help you as a teacher to understand classroom management? I think that I tend to think of classroom management as just, here are the rules and we're going to follow them. And if you don't, there will be consequences. And in a lot of ways, that is what it boils down to. But there's always room for empathy. And there's always room for understanding and listening and hearing multiple perspectives. And I think that's one thing I took out of this week of learning about mental health, is that classroom management isn't just setting rules, and it's also